Hi, I'm Amy. Welcome to Book Girl. This is our place where we talk about books and authors and all of the fun things about reading and collecting and enjoying the beautiful books that there are out there in the world. Normally, I tell you guys about a book that I've recently read and give a quick little review and a synopsis of it and throw in the comments places where you can buy them. Today, I went into my library and found 12 free books. Free! Totally free! And so I want to share with you what I found for free and kind of give you an idea of how I hunt for books, how I select books when I'm looking out in the wild and trying to find the books that I have to build my collection, and what my overall library looks like. Give you a little taste of my library experience. A little bit of background. A few years ago, my husband and I packed up everything and moved across the country, and in that process we agreed that I would take my library of 3,000 books, over 3,000 books, down to 300. And I told my husband, okay, I can do this because I'm moving from a book desert to a book paradise. A book desert is a term that's used in the book community to define an area, a location where rare and hard to find books are incredibly rare and hard to come by. And living books, things like you would find on a Charlotte Mason school list, or things that maybe we might have grown up reading like 25, 30 years ago or more, are not readily available. And a book paradise is my term that I coined. You can use it, whatever, to define an area where you can find books easily and quickly, and you can find living books, you can find books that are collectible, you can find books that are the things that I'm looking for my library relatively easily and without too much work. So since I dropped my library down to 300 books, in the 2.5 years I've been here, I have increased it to over 1,000. So I've more than tripled my my collection since I moved here 2.5 years ago. I think I did a pretty good job. And one of the ways that I do that, I have three main ways that I add books to my collection. One, my favorite, is to go into our public library and scour their free bookcases. They have 2 bookcases that are 5 shelves high, filled with free books. And I don't go in there as often as I'd like, but I do try to get in there semi-regularly and take a peek at what they have on the shelves. And sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's a lot. Like today I brought home a dozen, and that's a good haul. Other times, and then also in our library they have a bookstore, and so when I have cash on hand, they only take cash, I don't blame them, I will step in there and look and see if there's anything interesting there. I did take a picture of a gem that I found in there a couple weeks ago. I didn't have cash on hand, so it's probably still sitting there. And I'm going to post that later and see if you think that it's a gem too, and if it's one you'd scoop up if you have the cash on hand. The other way that so that's one, going to the library and getting free books. Step up 2 is thrift stores and book sales. I'm lumping those as one because they're the same idea. The thrift stores, we have a lot in my town, and I think 5 or 6 thrift stores. And so and a lot of our thrift stores have book rooms. You can go in the room and it's crammed wall to wall with books and DVDs and all kinds of cool stuff that are for bibliophiles, and I love it, love it. And so again, usually I like to have cash on hand when I'm going there, so I stick to a budget, because if I have my debit card, I will blow, and it's easier to just stick to cash. But our thrift stores do take debit or credit, which is nice. So I'm not as confined, there, so it's great. So library, thrift stores. Also, I use the internet, Amazon and thrift books. And that's why I keep throwing those referral links up there, because I have gotten a lot of books over the years through with Amazon gift cards or whatever, just buy a book. Sure, I'll buy something new off Amazon if I have a gift card. Or and thrift books is a great place to find good out of print books, to find deals. They have tons of thrift book deals, and their deals stack. And so if you buy one book that's on a special deal, you can usually get a better discount the more you purchase that are in their deals section. And so that can be dangerous. And so those are my main ways that I look for books and add books to my library. Okay, and of course I have family who knows that I love to read, and they'll throw books at me for birthdays and Christmas and things like that, and that's fun and I love it. And I will be happy with any book that you give me. It may go on the bottom of Mount TBR depending on what, but I really do appreciate getting books as gifts. So, are we ready? Let's dig in. Alright, so somebody must have been getting rid of some Civil War books today. I found this biography of Lee. Now, I scoop up books just by looking at the cover. Does it look like something I want to read? Well, yes, that does. So they have them on the shelf, spine out, and I see, oh, okay, Lee. Is it General Lee? Yes, it is. Oh, well, that looks interesting. This is an abridgment of a Pulitzer Prize winning biography. I'm just now reading this. I looked at literally looked at the cover and said, oh, that looks pretty. And I would not read 4 volumes about Lee, but I might actually read an abridgment here. I usually have a pretty strict rule about not reading abridged books, but I will make an exception for this. And so yeah, I'll stick that on my Civil War shelf and see if it's any good. If you've read any of these, or if you have opinions about them, throw those in the comments down below. Be polite to each other. We are book friends here. Alright, next. One of my favorite genres to read is fantasy, but I'm particular about my fantasy. I read specific authors. I don't read just like pop fantasy and stuff. That's not my thing. Respect you if it is yours, not mine. So like I've read Harry Potter multiple times. I'm reading it aloud to my youngest right now. I've read Narnia multiple times. I've read Lord of the Rings multiple times. I'm probably going to reread The Hobbit. Put that on my currently reading reread list because I have an annotated copy that's just screaming my name and I want to reread it. But the one who started it all, who all of those authors, Tolkien, Lewis, and even J.K. Rowling, say inspired them, is George MacDonald. And if you're not familiar with George MacDonald, he lived in the 1800s, and he started the fantasy genre, and he was a pastor. And so he's writing fantasy from a biblical worldview, and his works are incredible. I've read probably 3 or 4. Probably only 3 or 4, but these are his fairy tales, and I did not look at I didn't look at the table of contents before I picked it up. I saw the name and I said that's mine. And so it has The Light Princess, which is excellent. It has The Shadows. I haven't read that yet. The Giant's Heart. I haven't read that yet. There's a lot in here that I have not read. The Golden Key. Oh my goodness, that's so good. There are so many, yes, but most of these are ones I have not read. And so this will go on my fantasy shelf, and I might just throw it on like my shelf to just have by me and to just pick one up and read it every once in a while. His books are they're deep. They really make you think. And he, like I said, he lived over 150 years ago, so he has an older way of speaking. We just don't speak that way anymore, and so it takes more thought to process what he's saying, but they're so worth it. And so if you're homeschooling, for sure, read George MacDonald aloud to your kids. It will be just such a good time of discussion and conversation. Like I said, we had some Civil War books on the shelf today. Civil War was like my first big history obsession. And so I collect a lot of books about the Civil War, and I love learning about the Civil War. And Abraham Lincoln was my first favorite president. I spent a lot of time growing up going to Lincoln historic sites and writing research papers on Lincoln, and I just love learning about Lincoln. So this one I had never heard of. It's called Abraham Lincoln and the Second American Revolution, which is a cool way to refer to the Civil War, but that's absolutely what it was. This is a Pulitzer Prize winning author, James McPherson, and he also wrote a book called Battle Cry of Freedom, which I've not read. But he's examining Lincoln's role in the Civil War and just showing what he did to keep our country together. And so I'm gonna throw this on my Lincoln shelf. Probably not gonna get to it for a bit because I have a lot of other Lincoln books that are more significant to me individually, but I will get to it soon, so that's exciting to have. This one I'd never heard of, and it looks like it might be self-published. Probably is. Flipping through it, looks like it's probably self-published, but there, some self-published books are really, really good. I've got some favorite books that are self-published. So this is Cowgirls, Women of the American West, and it's pretty beat up. It's been loved. It's paperback, and I think the title says it all. I haven't, love that. Can't read the description on the back. Sorry. But I thought, well, I could always use another book on the American West. I mean, I have a lot, but, you can always use another one, right? And so might be good to have for reference later. If somebody's writing a research paper, if somebody needs to know something more about cowgirls, hey, I have a book for that. This one is called The Slave Community, Plantation Life in the Antebellum South. And it's a revised and enlarged edition, which sounds good. I'm not familiar with this title. John W. Blassingame is the author. I'm not familiar with the author either. But I like learning about the Civil War. I like learning about what life was like for enslaved people, and I like learning about what happened after the Civil War and such. So this will be an interesting perspective. I've read one of the best books on the enslaved community that I've ever read was a juvenile nonfiction book called To Be a Slave by Julius Lester, and I'll do a full-on review about that soon. I'll probably do that in the next couple of days. And he collected stories from slaves, formerly enslaved individuals who were old and dying, and I love hearing those first-hand accounts. I don't know that that's what this is going to be, but I'm obviously To Be a Slave was written for young adults, and so high school and below. So I'm curious. I would love to read something that's more an adult academic level of what happened, what people survived, and so that's, yes. History, Civil War, yay. This one, Who Was Jesus by N.T. Wright. And I don't own anything by N.T. Wright, but he was referenced in a lot of my classes. I took 4 years of basically seminary classes. I did not end up with a degree. That's a whole other story. But he was definitely referenced in multiple classes that I took. They were looking at his writings and looking at things he said, and so I thought, well, hey, this is free, and I don't own anything by him. Well, that's going home with me. So I'll put it on my Christianity shelf, and it'll go to the bottom of the TBR shelf. Then I have The Adams Women, Abigail and Louisa Adams, their sisters and daughters, by Paul G. Nagel. I had not heard of this one either, but I love learning about early American history. Oh, I love history. That's my topic. And I'm really curious to I know a little bit about Abigail Adams. I've read a few books about her, but I don't know anything about her sister or really what her family life was beyond her marriage. And so this will hopefully be an interesting peek into that. This is going to go on my American biography shelf. And I'll get to it when I get to it. Now this one I might read as I reread The Hobbit, or I might wait until I finish rereading the annotated Hobbit, and then dive into this as I'm rereading The Lord of the Rings, because, you know, I feel I totally see how people read The Lord of the Rings every year. I've not done it. I usually watch the movies every January. I usually watch the movies. I didn't watch them this year, but I try to every year to watch the extended editions. And as far as I'm concerned, the theatrical editions were nice when they were in the theater, but I really haven't watched the theatrical editions since I watched them in the theater. I watch the extended editions all the time, and I love The Lord of the Rings. I read so much, and I want to read so wide and so many things. I have not reread them as often as I'd like, but we'll get there. So this is Understanding the Lord of the Rings, and it's the best of Tolkien criticism. So that tells me that this is going to be a collection of essays collected by Rose A. Zimbardo and Neil D. Isaacs. Yes, it's a collection of essays by a variety of authors, and so I think that'll just be fun to poke at what people think about The Lord of the Rings. And so they've got Frodo and Aragorn, the concept of the hero, folktale, fairy tale, and the creation of a story, Tolkien and the fairy story, you know, so I think this will be interesting. And I'll probably just throw it alongside my Lord of the Rings books when I actually decide to reread them again for the umpteenth time. And I don't typically reread books, so it really says something when I say, oh yes, I want to reread The Lord of the Rings again. Oh yes, I'm rereading Harry Potter again, because, like I said, I have so many books I want to read. If I spend all my time rereading, I won't get to the other ones. So, and I know that I'm not ever going to read all of the books. I know. It's something I've made peace with, mostly. This one is Empire of Liberty, The Statecraft of Thomas Jefferson. And I don't have a Thomas Jefferson biography on my shelf, so I thought, well, it's free. It can go on my shelf for a little bit, and we'll see if it's any good. It says that it's about Jefferson's legacy of American foreign policy and the critical themes which continue to highlight significant today. The struggle between isolationists and interventionists, the historic ambivalence over the nation's role as a crusader for liberty, and the relationship between democracy and peace. So, and it's written by 2 scholars, so, I don't know, we'll look at it and see if it's interesting. I'll throw it on my American biography shelf and get to it when I get to it. Oh, it's been written in! I love that! Somebody underlined things that were important to them. That's fun! I love reading books that people have written in. It's like having a conversation with someone. It's great. Alright, so then I got The Beautiful Soul of John Woolman, Apostle of Abolition, by Thomas P. Slaughter. And again, I have never heard of John Woolman. If you know anything about him, throw it in the comments below. But he was just a tailor who was known as one of the few Quakers who went to meetings in a variety of states, and he was a voice for the world when they spoke against slavery in 1774. So that's going to be interesting. This will probably go on my American Revolution shelf because of the time period, and because I feel like I'll get to it sooner if it's on there. But I think it'll be really interesting to see how it played out. That, you know, what he advocated for, and obviously we know that that slavery was not ended during the American Revolution, and it's disheartening that it wasn't. Truly sad, because it was such a horrible piece of our history, but it is something that we need to remember. And so I really love hearing stories about people who fought to end it earlier than it did, because it's encouraging that there were Christians and that there were people who were trying to do the right thing. And so I'm looking forward to reading this. And history does not have to be boring. One of my favorite quotes is, "If history were told in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten." And so as I'm reading these books, if I decide that, no, you're dry, then they don't stay on my shelves, because history should not be boring. It should not be dry. If you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. It's so engaging. There were so many fantastic and just mind-boggling, interesting things that happened during history, and that's what we need to tell, and that's what we need to share. Is we need to share it in the form of stories so that people remember it. This is A History of Wales by John Davies, and I've never heard of it, but I thought, you know what, I don't have a single book in my Wales category, so why not? And then I thought, since I don't have any books in my Wales category, does that mean I can just throw this on my currently reading shelf? There's almost room over there. I have two shelves on my currently reading bookcase that are not being used. That means there's room, right? And so I thought, well, this would be fun. I don't know. It's Puffin. I tend to like Puffin books. They're classics. Their classics tend to be really good quality and good type and such. And so I don't know that I've read a Puffin history, but hopefully it'll be good, like the Puffin classics, and engaging. And if it's not, well, it was free. It can go in a yard sale pile, or if we ever get a little free library built, it can go there. And then I saw, last but definitely not least, I hope, I saw this John C. Maxwell. I don't know that I've read any of his books, so okay, I'll pick that up for free. And it's called Winning with People. Discover the people principles that work for you every time. And as somebody who struggles to understand people and to, well, understand is not the correct word. And communicate, I don't feel, is always the correct word. But as someone who wants to improve on my interpersonal skills, I thought, well, this might be a good place to start. So I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I know that Maxwell was a famous author. I don't know much to speak of about him. I couldn't tell you if he was a good person or not. I don't know. I don't even know if he's still alive. Because he was popular when I was growing up. And so, I feel like I saw this one on the shelves when I was growing up from time to time, 2004. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. If you've read it and you have opinions, throw them in the comments section. Let me know what you think. So what do you think? How do you find books? Where do you get your deals? Have you looked on thrift books or another website for any good books? Put all that in the comments down below. Also, up here, I want to give you a preview. My next video tomorrow, I will talk about 100 things to know about architecture. So we will talk about this book. I read it a few weeks ago, and it was pretty good. I have some opinions. So we'll talk about that next time. And for now, that's all I've got. Make sure if you like this video, please make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and let me know what you think about these books in the comments down below. And happy reading!